Hi everyone, welcome to this video on how to convert an internship. Just to introduce you to the panel, we've got Frida, Deng, Rory, Neil and myself, Jake. Between us we've done a variety of law, banking, consultancy and accountancy internships, so hopefully you'll find this useful. So we're going to talk about the work you might expect to receive on internships and how to approach it, how to conduct yourself, the importance of demonstrating enthusiasm whilst undertaking the internship, how to approach group work and team presentations and what this might involve, how to approach and prepare for your final and your fast-track interviews. We'll all have a few final thoughts and then give you some additional resources that you might want to check out. So starting with the work. The type of work that you'll receive will obviously vary between different firms, different industries, but it's not normally going to be too complicated. You might be proofreading and cross-checking. If you're in a law firm, it could involve drafting contracts from templates, doing research, taking notes in meetings. Attention to detail is incredibly important. So when you can, use the house style. There might be certain templates in different types of programs that will mean your document that you give to your supervisor resembles the type of document you'll be producing when you work at the firm. And obviously spelling, grammar, structure are all very important. You can use the firm resources. So as I mentioned, there are templates. Some firms have something called knowledge management, where it might have a library team that can help you undertake specific research. They might have resources like Westlaw or Lexis in the legal context, and I'm sure Deng will talk about some of the resources in the banking context. You can use other employees. Ask decent questions and think your supervisor is also there to help you out, not just to assess you. As are other trainees, other interns. Do ask. And also firms tend to have their own intranets, which can help with this kind of thing. When you're doing the work, really important you consider who it's for. If it's for a client, then think, is it worth using lots of technical jargon that a client may not understand? Make sure it's something they can read easily, and obviously make sure you get it checked before you send it off to a client. If it's for an employee internally or your supervisor, if they say to you, give me a short summary, give them just that. But maybe attach a separate document with your more detailed research and sources in case they want to reference where you found particular information. And so make sure you do have those references available in case they ask you follow-up questions. Asking questions is incredibly important, so try and do the research yourself first. You're going to be working with very busy people, so if you can save them time by making the effort, do that. Only ask a question once. Listen to the answer. Always take a pen and paper with you so that you can write down the answer, you can write down instructions. It's okay to ask clarification questions, but make sure that you show that you can really listen and learn and take things on board. Also, a technique that I found personally quite useful is not interrupting your supervisor too often. So if you're doing a piece of work and questions arise every few minutes, rather than constantly interrupting them, maybe save up 8, 10 questions and say to them, look, when you've got 5 minutes, can we go over a few things? That might be a decent approach to take. As mentioned, always keep a notebook and pen on you. The amount of times I've gone into a supervisor's office and been given instructions at a really quick speed, I would never have remembered after walking out of the office. That was absolutely essential. Keeping a diary of the work you do is also a good idea, because you might have to talk about that at a later stage in your final interviews, as we'll come to later. But again, be very aware of confidentiality. So don't write down confidential details and take them home, because you've got to be very, very careful with that. So I'm going to hand over to these guys who will talk about whatever they like on that slide.
Hi. Building on what Jake said, I think it's important to remember that whilst the firms that you go to will be trying to make you feel like a valued member of the team and a valued member of the firm and try and give you work that will, A, that you will benefit from, and B, they can then use, it's not just a waste of everyone's time. The important thing to remember is that often they're not looking for you to complete the work to the highest standard, so don't be too afraid to have a go, to ask questions, and don't be afraid of getting things wrong. It's the only way you'll learn. So it's more about the process of how you go about the work, so make sure you're doing all the right things, speaking to the right people, looking in the right places, and fully committing to the work, no matter how tedious or interesting it might be. So it's important to keep that in mind whilst completing whatever task you're set.
I guess one example I could give, Jake was talking about knowing your audience, is when I was working in a consultancy firm, I was asked to do a piece of data analysis and then present it in a slide deck. And then I obviously asked my supervisor, who is this for? And he said it was for the client. client person, which then I know she won't have the same amount of technical knowledge as my supervisor or someone from the consultancy team. So then I made sure I used statistical methods that are a bit simpler rather than complicated financial models that I know my supervisor would expect. So that's just a good illustration of why that is really important.
So specifically in the investment banking industry, if you're involved in sales and trading, if you're working on a trading floor, then obviously the software you'll be dealing with most predominantly will be Bloomberg. So make sure at the start of the internship program, they run you through a training course with Bloomberg. Make sure you get very familiar with Bloomberg, know all the shortcuts, because most of the time when your team needs you to do anything, you'll be on Bloomberg. And if you can zap through that, they'll be very impressed with you. And also, I think, most importantly, if you're a salesperson, then you're going to be very familiar with the presentation softwares and be very, very confident when making presentations to a team. So I had to do quite a lot of pitches during my internship, and it usually involves standing in front of a board of very senior employees trying to sell them an idea. And most of the time, they will know if you're lying, they know if you're like just fluffing around. So make sure you get straight to the point and are confident about it.
So I'd make a couple of general points. I think on any internship, make sure that you take on complex work. It might be very easy to say, oh, I prefer to do something a bit more easier because then you'll do a better job and you're handed something good. But if you end up leaving your internship and you've only done photocopying, you're not going to have anything to talk about in the final interview, and also even if you don't get that certain job, then you can't have anything to talk about in other interviews on what you did on that internship. And another thing about just being enthusiastic about even the most boring menial tasks. So for example, once I had to stay late and put sign here stickers on a contract, which took a long time and potentially could have been very boring. But when asked about it, I would sort of try and be more enthusiastic by understanding the wider context of what I was doing, and that deal wouldn't have been completed that night if I hadn't had the sign here stickers on each page.